you make oxygen and water cool.
Yeah, and I agree.
Very different. You don't feel so
There's a blind.
Another commercial. Right. We have a weekly.
Yeah. Good, thanks.
Good evening. We have a small disagreement with Andy. He doesn't know if he should introduce me or I should introduce him. So since I got to the microphone first, I'm going to introduce him. Welcome. We are delighted. We are delighted that we had a chance and opportunity to host this event. This is Andrew Seifer, a chair of interior design.
So on behalf of the Interior Design Department, undergraduate here at FIT, I want to welcome everybody to this event. We are hoping that this format and this venue works, that this is something in the future that we can bring forth. It's very, very important for our program to actually engage with other programs, hence the reason why Grazyna and myself have decided to host this event on the basis of our departments. So I'd like to introduce Grazyna Pilatowicz of Sustainable Interior Environments.
It was a great opportunity when Tiffany from the Urban Green Council came up to me and said, why won't we do something together? And I'm delighted. I'm a chair of Sustainable Interior Environments, so this is very much along the lines of us spreading the information and giving access to young people for their development. I'm going to ask Russell and Tiffany to introduce their presence.
We do everything in pairs here. My name is Russell Unger. I'm the executive director at Urban Green Council, and thanks so much to Grazyna and Andrew for hosting us today. And this is a great event, great showing, and we hope to do something like this again next year. For those of you who aren't familiar with Urban Green, I hope you guys all are, but we're the New York branch of the U.S. Green Building Council, and we have about 50 plus programs a year like this one that Tiffany manages. We are extremely active in city legislation and policy. We are on our second task force that we've led for the city. The most recent one was the Building Resiliency Task Force, which formed the core of the mayor's resiliency recommendations in his plan. We do research, and we have a very, very active emerging professionals group, which put this event together. So the reason I actually asked to kind of say something right now is just to check in with everyone. How many times have you been at a seminar or course and midway through it or afterwards you asked yourself what the heck you went for and what you actually remembered from it and took away? It certainly happened to me a lot. And what if I told you there's a program in New York where 80% of the people who attend it say that they learned something that they're going to apply the next day at their job, and 90% of the people say they're going to recommend it to someone? Well, this program exists. It's called GPRO. And if you missed talking to the folks from GPRO here, they're at a table at the back. And I just came here actually to talk about that and talk very briefly about the position that we're hiring. We're hiring an education growth manager. GPRO's now reached 4,000 students. It's a program to teach trades, contractors, and operators what they need to know about green building. We're on the cusp of announcing major national agreements with unions. But we shouldn't be reaching 4,000, we should be reaching 40,000. And so we're looking for someone who knows sustainability well, a background in design or construction, who's passionate about the issues, can get into other people's heads and wants to make scaled impact. And those are kind of the things we're looking for. You can read more about the presentation, about the position, but it's a real way to make a difference. So I came here because probably if it's not someone in the audience today, it's probably someone you know who's right for this. So please spread the word. And Tiffany.
So thanks for everyone for coming. I'm Tiffany Burrows-Yost. I'm the Director of Programs at Urban Green. And Grazyna and I have been talking about this topic for quite a while because we really feel like there's been a shift in the way that design education has been developing over the past 5-10 years probably, and you've seen a lot more of these specialty programs in sustainability, particularly on the design side. And we felt like this was really a topic, what does that mean for the profession? What does that mean for people pursuing advanced degrees? And we felt like that was a topic that really deserved a kind of bigger format and more than just our voices in a cafe. So we also thought that it was the perfect program for the collaboration between FIT and Urban Green, and particularly with our emerging professionals group. So our emerging professionals, which is professionals under 30, with Urban Green, have really played a strong role in developing this program and hosting the career fair in conjunction with FIT, which had well over 100 attendees today. So that was fantastic. Yeah, that was great. So we have fantastic speakers today. I'm going to let Emily introduce our speakers. But we really felt like this is a topic that we wanted to hear more about and really see what's happening in the profession and how this is impacting the development there. So with that, I will ask the speakers to come up and Emily to come up. And I'll introduce Emily while you guys are coming up. Emily Danzinger-Willemsen is an architect at Gensler, and normally we don't give too much detail, but I think it's really relevant in this discussion. She studied architecture. She has a bachelor's of architecture from Rensselaer Polytech, and has been practicing architecture since she graduated. She's also a lead AP, and she serves on our Emerging Professionals Programs Committee. So we're really happy with this is the second year in a row that we've done this salon in conjunction with our EP group. Chad has also been one of the key developers in this this event tonight. So it's a really fantastic collaboration between our young professionals, and we're happy to have Emily moderating tonight. So thank you.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Tiffany and Russell. So as she mentioned, we're really excited that everyone was able to make it today, and very excited for our speakers. So just to, I guess, introduce everyone, since that's what we're here for. We have Grazyna Pilatowicz, and she's a tenured faculty member here at FIT. She's also the chairperson for the Sustainable Interior Environments program, which she helped to initiate, develop, and launch. She has a background in interior design and consulting. She's dedicated to ensuring that the designs account for a broad cultural and ecological context. She's an active member of IIDA, IDEC, and the U.S. Green Building Council. We also have Nestor Bottino. He is a partner at Holzman Moss Bottino Architecture. He's been practicing for 25 years and is focusing on academic and civil performing arts centers, libraries, civic centers, and student life centers. He's also taught performing arts center design studios. We also have Nico Kienzl of Atelier Ten. He's a director there. He focuses on advanced building analysis with an optimization of facades and building systems. He's a lead fellow and a representative member of the U.S. General Services Administration, their Green Building Advisory Committee. So if everyone could help me welcome them. And they each have a short presentation to tell you more about what they do.
Who goes first?
Who's first?
So I am an interior designer, but for the past few years I devoted myself fully to being an educator. And a few years ago came up the idea of creating the program on sustainable interior environments. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about the program, but I also wanted to tell you where the idea came from. This is a program which was created in response to students asking for it. And it was students who were graduating from the bachelor degree program from BFA and were coming to me and saying, oh, we want to learn more. Sustainability is becoming such an important part of our profession. And in the 4-year undergraduate program, there is not really enough of the space or time to learn what it is and to understand really deeply what is it about. I believe there's also teaching sustainability in the true meaning of sustainability, and I'm calling that the three-legged stool, the social, the ecological, and the economic aspects of the design. You really study good design. It isn't just about environment, it is very much about people. So especially for interior designers, this is something what decides about the design decisions that we make. I think what I wrote here, that's another reason for developing that graduate program is realization that yes, we have incredible amount of information available, but you need some kind of compass to navigate through the avalanche of that information. And unfortunately, at this point yet, the undergraduate programs are so stressed for time that very often do not prepare students well enough to be able to evaluate critically the sources of the information. There is also something about how quickly our professions are changing, and you cannot just teach skills, you have to teach how to learn. And I think that maybe right now sustainability needs to be in a graduate program, and we will discuss that further just for a moment until we can infuse teaching about sustainability into the undergraduate programs. So I want to tell you a little bit about the program that I'm chairing. Our goals are to make the knowledge of sustainability inherent part of our design decisions, to train agents of change. What I mean by that is students, when they leaving the school, are really asking me, where should I go to work so I can work on sustainable projects? And I'm saying, go wherever and change the way they practice. You be the change. You start to spread that information. Prepare future leaders. That's the other goal. I also, I want to remember about that, that's partly undercover idea was to teach future faculty, because I think this is part of the problem, that we need teachers who can teach sustainability. At this point, that's part of the missing link. So the program which we created 2 years ago is very intensive, is very highly structured, and is research-based. There is no studio in this program. It focuses on principles of sustainable interior environments. It is an evening program which is meant for working professionals. It takes 2 years, typically 3 evenings per week, 36 credits. The classes which are included in this program include 4 segments of graduate seminar, 2 segments on environmental behavior research, ecology and human impact, chemistry because some of those names of the ingredients in the products are so foreign to designers that their eyes are crossing. So we want to prepare them for materials and products with the transparency movement. Survey of sustainable architecture and interior design historical origins. I think this is fascinating about the wisdom that we lost and the vernacular design which knew how to do it before AC and before we got stupid. Integrated environmental systems where we're putting together the sound, the light, and the air. Universal design and ergonomics and other classes. You can see this is the structure of the program. The graduate seminars, the environmental behavior research, this is why I'm saying it's quite rigid. So when you start this program, you have to follow that order because one class leads to the next. And then the courses which are adding the information. Who should apply for this program? I would say people who are already in a profession, students who are graduating from undergraduate schools, and educators. We're asking that people who come to the program have background in professions related to the built environment, so that we have a common language when we are discussing issues in a classroom. The basic requirements, BFA from accredited college, English proficiency, and commitment to the health, safety, and well-being of people and the environment as a requirement for the program. If you would want more information, you can find on our website, and anytime you can email me and I will answer any question. My email address is on the website, so you can connect with me very easily. This is the first happy group of 8 graduates, May 2013. 2 of them faculty of FIT, so I'm very happy that the information will be spreading more in our school. I am looking forward to further discussion, and I'm going to give up the microphone to the next person.
Okay. Is this good? Okay, let's see. Oh, which way? That's you. We have one moment, please. No, that's Atelier Ten. There we go. Okay, so will this advance it, or? We'll have to figure out how to bring you back. Okay. Okay. We have a generalist architecture practice, my firm. We integrate architecture and interiors. We are focused primarily on cultural projects, performing arts, libraries, different cultural centers. In thinking about sustainability, we try to make it so intrinsic in our practice that for tonight, I thought we should try to pull something out of the projects that we do and try to focus on that. But it really is something that we try to make completely intrinsic. So here are the 3 topics. Shape, surface, and light. This is a project in Columbia, Missouri. It's a public library. So the most important thing initially on the project that we try to do is to shape it. How do you orient it? How do you make it work with the climate? How do you make it work with the light? How do you make the building start out being intelligent in terms of the way it relates to the climate? So you can see here a circular shape, some notches that are cut into it to bring light into the building, and some other orientations in terms of the climate. These are the notches that we cut into the north face of the building. They bring light in. They also create a surface, so they create part of the interest both inside and outside of the building, the contrast of the glass to the natural stone that's from the region. At night, it becomes a way to see what's going on inside. And again, it affects the way the interior is shaped. So these steps that we take as basic starting points on a design have everything to do with the experience, with the sustainability, with the way that the building functions, the way that people use the building. You can see that the natural light that's coming in is being balanced with electric light, and so this is creating an area within the library, the collections and the reading area that's balancing the two, and changes over the course of the day. In the lobby, which was the first image that you saw, the completely glass enclosed lobby, obviously we had to be very careful about the way daylight was being brought into that space so that it would work both in terms of the use of energy and in terms of the comfort of the people. So we did a very intricate daylighting study. I also happen to like the graphic. I think it looks great. But we did a number of these, and as a result, we chose the glass surfaces that surround this space, both at the lower level and at the upper level, which I'll show you in a second, so that the glass is both a transmitter of light and also a shading device, so that it's not letting the direct light into the space, but is bringing illumination in. On the upper floor, this is the quiet reading room of the library, and it gives you a combination of views and also shading devices in terms of the way that the frit is used or the way the glass block is used. The glass also comes into the inside. It becomes part of the character of the architecture of the library. A project in Texas on the Gulf Coast. We were lucky that the view of the Corpus Christi Bay was to the north, so we were able to design a building that's two shapes, one within the other. This large glass shape, and then you can see through it. It's more visible at night. There is another shape inside, which is what contains the performance space. And so this large opaque shape is protecting the interior performance space with its controlled light and its electric light. In the lobby between the two shapes, light is able to come in and it's controlled, and these fins that are also structural are also a way of diffusing the light and cutting some of the glare from the sky. And then again, the surfaces become part of the character of the architecture. Again, the surface that is serving both in terms of the sustainability and in terms of the experience of the building. This is a project about an hour outside of New York at Western Connecticut State University. As you can see, it's still under construction. Again, a very large shape, making this shape opaque, but then also giving it a surface that reflects light, is able to work as well as possible. This is a west-facing portion. Again, the treatment of the surface is a way to get character. And then the north face of the building, which contains the visual art studios and the scene shop, are much more open and allow light into the building, controlled light. Again, the treatment of the surface, both of the masonry to contrast with the glass. This is a civic complex north of Dallas. So we decided that we were going to save on the use of steel. So we built a 700-foot long double white load-bearing stone wall built of regional limestone. We estimate we saved about 50 tons of steel on this project using this, and also being able to use local masons. You can see the contrast of the different materials. This is interesting because some of the special shapes that contain the city hall and the library reading rooms are very much like the shapes of the water reclamation tanks that are on the south side of the building. Those shapes protrude inside. Again, they become part of the character of the architecture, part of the design, and they also become sort of the generating idea of these light fixtures that start defining certain smaller spaces within the building. Also in existing buildings, in this one it was a north-facing large glass wall. We shaped it using this long undulating wall, which isolates the public spaces from the theater spaces where the light's more controlled. A couple of small libraries that we recently completed in Delaware, again using surface and light, letting daylight deep into the building. This is a project that we did with Atelier Ten. This is a large reading room that looks out onto a rooftop garden, which is also a green roof, as you can tell. And then this is an invited competition that we did just quickly. Again, the two shapes. The opaque shape is the one that contains the specialized exhibits. The glass shape is the one with the interactive exhibits. And the way that the light is controlled in that results in, again, shape, surface, and light.
Let's see whether this works. Yep. So just really quickly, I'm with an organization called Atelier Ten. We are a environmental consulting firm. So we work with architects and engineers on making buildings more sustainable. So our mission is really all about shaping a more sustainable world. We've been around for around 23 years now, started out in the UK but have a global reach, which is quite unique for a relatively small boutique firm of globally 100 people working in a consulting role on buildings all across the country, in the US and all across the world. We are a very young and interdisciplinary team, and I think we're going to be talking a lot about tonight what is kind of like the background of people that we are looking for, people in the industry are looking for. And we feel very strongly that we need to bring people that have both left brain and right brain capabilities together to really address sustainability in a positive way. It's very much a collaborative effort, as I'm sure everybody who's dealt with sustainability knows. This is something that requires deep knowledge of certain areas, but also a very holistic and broad approach. So we try internally to foster both, but also collaborate with the best in the field to deliver on the promise of a more sustainable world. It is really, all of our work is about the built environment. So we do very little work in terms of policy or product development, but all about what we do is buildings, whether individual buildings or master plan projects, which is, as we know, just a part of the whole effort of creating a more sustainable world, but it's the one that we feel very passionate about. As a firm, we do this through a number of services. We do environmental design consulting, which is kind of like the mushy term for everything from running a charrette for a client and helping him what he means when he says, I want to be green, to sitting with clients to understand precedents and then dreary detail of maintenance and operations. But really trying to take this holistic approach about how to integrate sustainable considerations into the design process. We support this through a lot of rigorous analysis, especially on the energy side. We do full service lighting design, so we help design both the criteria and down to the fixture, the lighting design in spaces. We do a lot of larger scale work on the master planning scale. So for example, working here with Columbia on the Manhattanville master plan, helping again building owners to develop strategies on a larger scale, do all of the good benchmarking work that organizations like USGBC have been fostering with LEED in recent years, but also look at this more holistically in terms of other benchmarking system, whether it's Living Building Challenge or Estidama in the Middle East or so on. And getting more and more into larger scale issues of carbon management as clients are starting to address CO2 emissions as a real individual issue. And at the same time, looking at very technical issues of facade optimization as some of our core expertise area. As I said, we do this on building projects in collaboration with architects. And I'll just show you a couple of them to give you a kind of like a sense of the scale of the work. This is the business structural facility for the University of Illinois. It was the first LEED project on the campus. This is a university who had no particular agenda at the time when we started this project. But we ended up with a LEED Platinum, very high performance, well integrated building that really optimized the use of daylight, an optimized facade with very high performance HVAC systems to allow them to get a very low maintenance, high performance building that creates great learning environments. This was one of our first projects, or one of my first projects with Atelier Ten in the United States. We've come a long way since then. We just finished our first net zero building here in Connecticut. An intensive environmental learning center with classrooms, dormitory rooms, kitchens that is completely net zero. So it creates all of the energy that it uses on an annual basis through photovoltaics on site. And it really showed how the design process has changed, where we now really need to capitalize for projects like this, really need to capitalize all of our energy decisions through the installation of renewables. So you suddenly have discussion about like how often do your students shower? Do you want to regulate how much they can shower? How hot does the water get? Because all of this comes into as input in an energy equation that you then need to look at if you, in offsetting HVAC, your photovoltaic or renewables installations. We do a lot of work with institutional buildings. This project we worked with Holzman Moss Bottino, the Southern Kentucky Performing Arts Center, where we did lighting design, really lighting is a huge component in both the environmental aesthetic and the experience of an occupant in a building, but also of the energy equation. So really optimizing lighting design is a big part of our work. And we do a lot of work on highly intensive, energy-intensive building. This is a project we did for Dartmouth College. It's a life science center. And I think what we often forget in our conversations about sustainability is that a lot of the early examples that we've seen have been relatively easy buildings to green, let's call it. Nature centers, visitor centers in our park, things that had a very low energy footprint to begin with. But we're now, if we really want to be serious about energy efficiency and sustainability, you need to start looking at the hard building. So this is a science building full of fume hoods, fuel of equipment, very, very high energy using building type. And we worked through a design process that became very quantitative right from the beginning to help the client understand where do they spend energy, how do they save energy, how does that impact the operations budgets, and how does it influence their operations and maintenance once the building is operated. We do a lot of work with historic renovation buildings, which is a more intensive, in a way, interaction with the existing fabric of a building, especially like here at Yale, where the building to the left side is a Paul Rudolph building from the 1960s that was both loved and hated, but it's a building that needed to be preserved. So it's really about how do we change the existing fabric of some of the buildings that we have. And then as a final project, to just show you the full range, there's a project we are very proud of and just completed, is Gardens by the Bay in Singapore. These are 2 massive greenhouses in Singapore designed to house both dry and cool and moist and cool plant material that wouldn't survive in Singapore otherwise. Both of these buildings are completely cooled and dehumidified or humidified by biomass. So it's a very complex HVAC energy strategy that takes biomass from wood clippings and waste wood in a biomass boiler configuration to basically provide a short carbon cycle cooling system that only could have been made to work by really optimizing all of the systems, not only the energy side, but also the facade, and in a really design integrated way. Thank you. We'll probably put another slide up, otherwise you're going to be this for the entire time. I'm not opposed to that.
Maybe we shut the projector totally for the energy efficiency.
That's a good idea too. Let's just close this. Yeah, let's just.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. So to start off, I'd like to just frame our conversation a little bit. We see sustainability infiltrating society. It's in economic, environmental, corporate industries, but we want to focus today more on the design side and what specifically the design of the built environment. So just to start off that, both when we get to question and answers later, and also just for our conversation here.
I can ask, do we need to hold the microphones? Okay.
Can you guys hear us? Okay, great. So there's a number of graduate design programs that offer masters in architecture, interior design, specializing in sustainability and environmental design. What is the role these specialty degrees play in the design profession and in advancing the sustainable design?
Who do you want to start with? Start with me. I think this is a very interesting question because like my own background has been that I studied architecture first and then did a building science degree at a time when really there weren't specialized degree programs out there in sustainability. Over the last couple of years, as I've been more and more involved in hiring people for our practice, we've seen these programs to emerge and that really focus on sustainability. And I think it really added a layer to the skill set that students bring to us that come out of these programs. And it's often, in my mind, a question of how much do these programs focus on learning kind of like fundamentals and real approach versus very kind of like current skill sets of like tools, software, things like that. And I think there's some pros and cons in each, but we find what we often look for is people, because the industry is moving so fast, we know that we need to do a lot of in-house training on top of whoever we hire. So it's often the short-term skill sets of like being skilled in the latest software is less important for us than somebody who has an approach to the fundamentals behind it. So I think there's one needs to really look closely at these programs. What is it that actually is taught, and also what we look for and what we hire is what have people done before what do they bring to the table in addition to their sustainability background.
You can imagine that this is exactly what I would like to hear. I know that our professions, architecture, interior design, anything related to the built environment is very complex and difficult. And adding to that a layer of sustainability doesn't make it any simpler. On the contrary, adds to the challenge. What we see in students leaving undergraduate programs is that just getting the basic skills requires so much time and energy that's very often the understanding and the time for true delving yourself or into understanding the issues is missed, and that's where graduate program can come to help. And in a way, I don't know if it is just about programs devoted directly to sustainability. We've seen in interior design programs popping up devoted, let's say, to healthcare. I think that this is the right way for interior designers and architects to develop the next set of skills, but not skills which are just ability to operate a software. And we're working right now on the curriculum of the undergraduate program also to start to address those things. But it will take time. And I think those programs in sustainability are really just allowing young people after undergraduate program to have a little bit time to really think and find out what is the justification for their design decisions. I'm not questioning what are the criteria for those decisions. I think just thinking about it and not running through the sets of skills.
I think there's, taking a little bit of a step back, I think graduate programs, been thinking about this a little bit recently, I think that they have two radically different approaches to what you can get out of a graduate program. One is specialization, and the other one is a broadening of your way of thinking, of your design approach. And I think what we're discussing, the way this question is posed is more about the specialization. But I think within the design world, if you want, the architecture continuum with interiors, there's also a long tradition of the graduate program being where you actually have the time to think and think in a much broader way, to think about theory, to think about the social implications, whether it's philosophy classes, but to, rather than specialize, to get a broader footing to an approach to architecture. And so I think, both are certainly valid. So I think as much as it would be nice to give an easy answer, I think the answer is the student has to come to a conclusion at the end of their undergraduate degree, if they do decide to go to graduate school, of what it is that they want graduate school to give them. And I think we'll get to it in a few minutes, but I think it's not so much a short-term return, whether it's monetary or getting a job or getting a better paycheck at that first job. I think it's something that's much farther down the line, and I think that's what makes it a much more difficult decision to make because the return that you're going to get on it or the benefit you're going to get from that decision that you make now, whether to broaden or specialize, is going to come in 10, 15 years.
Thank you. Touching a little bit on what Nico said, and also what you all have said, as your firms grow and develop, what qualities are you looking for in people you're looking to hire or your staff? Are there specific skill sets you're looking for people to have, or is it that you want them to have a way of thinking and problem solving?
You want to go reverse?
Sure. We'll go this way now. I think we are looking for a balance, but not, when we hire, what we're looking for is someone who has enough skill to sit down the first day and be able to integrate into the office. We don't want someone who's just going to sit there for the first 6 months trying to, feeling bad because they can't contribute. So enough technical skill to be able to get started. But more importantly is to have a way of thinking, a way of analyzing, a way of synthesizing, a way of bringing a different way of viewing something, because we expect them to be part of a team and to contribute ideas. No, nobody's going to walk in the door and be given, a huge performing arts center to design on day one. As much as everybody would like to hear that, that's not going to happen. But they do need to be part of the team, and they do need to be able to think, and they need to be able to have some basic skills to get started with. But we imagine that most of the training will happen while they're in our firm. So we don't look for someone who is specialized and we're going to put them exactly in that slot and they're going to just be that. But again, that's the way we structure our firm. We're all generalists. We don't split it up in any significant way.
Since I'm for the past 10 years in school, I will not speak about, but I wanted to bring attention one short note. Very often young people leaving our school are saying, oh, I need to learn that software. Why didn't you provide me a course which would teach me this particular skill? Because they're getting the impression that the only people who are getting hired are people who are capable of operating that newest software. And I think the pressure is from students and from parents to provide the education which immediately makes students employable, forgetting about broader understanding and the skills which may in the future be more important than that particular software.
I think for us, it depends very much at what level we're hiring. That's always, if you want to hire somebody for a senior position, you're looking for a very specific profile, and those people are often very hard to find. I have to say because it's such an emerging field and there are just not that many people around who have significant experience with sustainability in a consulting role for us, is most of the hiring we do are basically graduates. And then we basically allow for the fact that we will train people internally for most probably up to 2 years until they're really where we want them to be from a skill set standpoint to be super useful. So what that means is that we look at staff for the long term. So the key things that we are looking for are whether people have good communication skills, whether they can organize their thought process and their work process well, and then whether they can balance both numerical analysis and understanding of the quantitative side of what we do with a more broad approach to the design and building process. That's the general profile we're looking for a graduate. That said, as we as a company have matured, we're now getting to a point where we start to see a role for specialists, where we just hired our first toxicologist, a person who just has a background in toxicology. And while we will train her to be a generalist to a certain extent, we hired her partly because she had a very special skill set based on her undergrad education that she could bring to us as well. So I think it's changing a little bit in the industry, that people start to have these pockets of knowledge, but it's still very much about being able to pick up things very, very quickly and work in a rapidly moving field of skills.
It seems as though the role of the apprenticeship has not gone away. It's very important in everyone's fields. I'm not sure if any of you would like to touch on, but is there a type of experience that you would consider invaluable, whether that's traveling or a type of study maybe that somebody did in school, or an internship or work experience that they've done in the past?
I'm not so sure that I could point to one thing that everybody in my firm did that they had to have just done. Definitely, I think the key aspect is communication, and because again, you highly interact with people in your professional world. You need to be collaborative. If you can't communicate what you're trying to achieve, you're fairly useless as a consultant. So the issue there is different people get it in different ways. Some people learn this through volunteer programs or doing extracurricular activities. Some people get it through travel. Some people just have it naturally. But I think that is a core skill set. Somebody who buried himself or hid themselves for 4 years in a library and learns everything about a subject but can't really explain it. That is not a very successful strategy for people of us, I would say.
If I can speak from 2 points of view. One is in a students coming to graduate program, we're looking for people with passion. I don't think that you can approach sustainability strictly from the point of technical skills. I think there is something there where you have to have a heart for it and be devoted. So that's one thing. The other thing, I'm thinking about faculty, and part of the situation which we have now arriving finally, knowing that the designs which we're doing are very expensive, very costly, and we have to prove to the clients the decisions. Evidence-based design is something what is required. So the faculty to teach young people how to design has to have some understanding of research. And if you're planning on teaching in the future, I suggest that you have master's degree which prepares you for research.
In terms of what we look for, the type of experience, the ideal is if someone has a balance between academic and job experience. Ideally, in the past, what seems to work the best is sort of a going back and forth between the two. So toggling between academic and more abstract, and then a more specific job. So there are a number of educational programs that are set up that way they're usually called co-ops, where you do 1 semester in an office, 1 semester in school. And we find that those people are better able to get started sooner in our practice, because we like to balance those two things. We like to balance the thinking with the doing. And if they come in and they're just, all they think about is design and not about the implications of design or the implementation of design, it takes us a while to sort of break them out of that and have them understand the implications of what they're doing. And so I think that in an ideal world, that balance is what we would normally look for. And it comes in different ways, and we adjust and we train them. I think Nico's very much right. We spend a lot of time and a lot of effort training people, but that makes it a little bit easier.
I guess so. Nestor and Nico, what roles do you have in your firms? Do architects and interior designers play, and what kind of advanced education do they have, or job experience? What kinds do they need? And then also, what are you seeing? Where are you seeing your students go, Grazyna, in terms of you showed an image of recent graduates. What types of positions are they going into?
Well, for us, as a consulting firm, I would say every one of our technical staff, so everybody who's doing consulting, has a background in either architecture or engineering as an undergrad degree, and then most people have a secondary degree that often crosses over into the other field. So lots of people like me, who I have a professional degree in architecture as a first degree, and then did a Master of Science in Building Technology. We had lots of people who have done that, who have 5-year undergrad degrees in architecture, and then did 2-year degrees in architecture and energy or systems and so on. But likewise, we have people who had like an engineering undergrad who then did a Master of Architecture. So there's lots of people who have that crossover. And we find that really helps them because they start to learn both languages in terms of like the engineering or the analytical language and the design language. So those are the rules. And they then play every role within the practice, just based on experience.
Our firm is made up entirely of architects and interior designers. And we don't distinguish between the two in a team role. Obviously, each one brings a certain set of skills. I guess what's sort of interesting is that it's harder for architects to think about interiors than it is for interiors people to think about architecture. It seems like it should be the opposite, but it's not. The interiors people are very willing to talk about the overall project and to bring their knowledge of design. And getting architects sometimes to talk about surfaces or color or some of the aspects that are more traditionally interior topics can be a struggle, but we try very hard to do that. And so in hiring people, we look for people that have a broader approach. Again, and I guess this is where our office and Atelier Ten are it's good that we're both up here because we're very different. One's a very specialized practice, ours is a very generalist practice. So that's what we look for, is people that can easily move along that entire spectrum of design and have enough understanding of the more technical and technological sustainability issues that even if we may not be the ones designing it because we'd rather work with Atelier 10, but we know enough to integrate it into the project intelligently.
I'm looking at people leaving our program that's, if they mainly local, if they New York, most of the architectural projects are interior projects anyway. There's a lot of construction going on, but there's much more interior projects. So I'm looking for people who graduate from this program to get involved in any type of interior design or architectural firm. I also believe that it is very good for interior designers, and especially for spreading information about sustainability, to get involved in facility management, especially in the bigger organizations or corporations which have multiple locations around the city or even around the country. And interior designers can have incredible impact. I think the next close to my heart is institutional design, where sustainability is especially important when designing nursing homes, schools, places where people with special needs will be residing. On the other hand, I will always bring the issue of I want to see more educators coming through the program like mine, so they can then go back and feed that information to the next generations of designers.
I think actually, to build on what you just said, I think one of the biggest problem right now with a lot of the sustainability focused programs, and I'm sure FIT is an exception, is there's just not, sustainability doesn't have a very strong body of research or track record of educational methodology, and there are not that many people out there that have actually a lot of experience in it. So I think I encourage everybody who goes into one of these programs to look very closely at the faculty, what their background is, whether there's some real connection between what the student wants to do and what the faculty has done before. Because there has been in recent years a real rush in creating these programs, and it's hard to find people to teach in them because there's just not that, there's not a good methodology there that cranked out a lot of people with a lot of skill sets, and so programs have been kind of like relabeling some people and creating new positions and finding people out of the industry and so on. So it's a tough one.
If I can jump into it, when we started the idea of this program, because FIT has so many different aspects of design, there was really a tendency to think, let's create a sustainability program which address all of the aspects of design which are taught at FIT. And then there was realization there is no faculty to teach that. There are no people who can teach it, something like this.
So Nico, I'm curious about a statement you made. You were talking about methodology. Is there a theoretical basis or an academic or theoretical basis to the programs in sustainability, or is that something else that hasn't quite caught up with the programs?
From what I've seen, it hasn't quite caught up yet. I think there's better like scientific and methodology in terms of climate research or kind of like change management, kind of like the sustainability management side of things. I think the design side is really very much bent depending on the individuals who are teaching it right now, and how they interpret what sustainability is and how it should be taught. I have a question for you. I'm really curious whether you see a program like this one as a program that exists in kind of like a transitional point in our industry, whether like 10 years from now there will be no sustainability master anymore, but everything we will do will be integrated in sustainability, and it's just part of our of the way we teach interior design, and it's just infused in it, so the specialization will go away. It's a question I ask me every day, where I'm not wondering whether I'm going to have a job in 10 years, because it's just everybody knows what I know. But I think it's an important question to just see where the industry goes.
This is exactly what should happen, that the program will outlive its usefulness. But on the other hand, I believe that in the meantime, that program will figure out for itself the next challenge. So yes, we want to see that sustainability becomes just another layer in good design. It isn't anything special. But on the other hand, that's why I was talking about that. Undergraduate programs are not enough at certain moment. We're starting to realize that they are training technicians more than professionals. There is not enough time in 4 years. Our professions are so complex. So I think that the graduate program will morph, but it will still exist.
All right, so I just have one last question, and then we'll open it up to the floor. But we've been discussing the different types of these programs and how quickly some of them are going together, and some of the considerations people who are considering grad school might have. There's one other arm to that, which is the economic arm. Many of us have a lot of student loans coming out of undergrad, and so the question is there, the rate on investment for going to getting your master's? Do you see individuals with a master's in sustainability and design working side by side with individuals that have pursued maybe MArch 1 or MArch 2, or are they pursuing different avenues within your firms? And I guess one question just is it necessary, or can you, if you do some of your own maybe research or find your way up in your own firm, do you need that master's degree?
Traditionally, you don't need a master's degree in architecture, at least in the broadest sense of the way architecture is conceived. Certainly for teaching, as a way of furthering your abilities, I think they're important programs. I think the majority of the master's programs in architecture in the country, as I understand them, are career change programs. So they're for the English major, they're for the philosophy major, for whatever, I don't mean to just pick on the liberal arts, but whatever major, and then they decide that they really want to pursue architecture, and so those tend to be 3 to 4 year graduate programs. So what's traditionally been a 1 or a 2 year Master's of Architecture on top of a bachelor's program They certainly are important for teaching, and for personal or devoting more time to what you would like to study. But within our practice, and I think most architecture practices that I'm aware of, someone coming in with 1 year or 2 years of experience after a master's degree or after a bachelor's degree, there's probably very little difference within the work environment.
I'm not sure how to approach the question about return on investment, because like I said, I do believe that there is a need of passion and hunger for information. On the other hand, I will say that I believe, maybe I'm idealistic, but I believe that you get your return on investment, and you may get it maybe financially, or maybe just in the way how you perceive your own role, and what can you do in your life on a long-term plan. I see that young people leaving school who have very good, let's say, presentational skills, yes, they will get immediately employed and they paid well, but are they going to be moving after that? Or are they going to be stuck in that position and forever just operate the next software? Also, I have to put a pitch for the program, because this is State University. and the program, if you come to our Sustainable Interior Environments program, it's probably the best deal in the town, because it's so inexpensive and you can do it while you're working. So I don't think that's necessarily, and I encourage everybody to look for that kind of opportunities, because of course this is not just FIT. There are other schools and programs in different cities, different locales, which are offering the same kind of opportunities.
So it's funny, I came to the American education system as an outsider. I've done my undergraduate degree, or really in Germany there's just one degree that you typically do, and then came to US, and somebody explained to me that the way the American education system works is that you do your undergrad to meet your future friends, you do your graduate degree, you meet your future business partners, and you then start teaching to meet your future spouse. So while that's obviously a joke, I think there's a truth to it, at least in the first two steps, is that I think undergrad is enormously important to shape people as a person. I think that's where a lot of the formative years for people happen, in terms of like how they grow as an individual, what their interests are, what their outlook on the world in a way is set up. I think graduate programs are important for people to position themselves professionally. In particular, if it's done in a way where you start thinking about building a professional network with the people that you meet that then grow out into the profession, in terms of the opportunity that you see while you go through your graduate degree, and also how you start positioning yourself within your field of the profession. So I think I agree, sometimes that payoff is more of one of a personal one in terms of a career choice somebody makes. Sometimes it's a very direct one, because it allows you to start networking within a direction in your professional development that will potentially lead to higher pay and growth within a practice, might really allow people to start their own thing with more confidence than they had before. So I think there is a role for that there.
I think I completely agree with the notion of personal growth. So let me just take the slightly different position and talk strictly about economics, very pragmatic. So I think there are some professions where the best thing you can do is get out of school as quickly as you can, even if it means taking on a lot of debt, because you're going to be making enough money when you get out that you can pay it off. And so if you do the balance sheet in 5 years, you're ahead of the game. I don't think design is one of those. I just don't think people make enough the first 5 years that they're out of school that they're going to balance out the debt that they incurred. So again, this is my repeated pitch for, I think, a balance of school or studies and work, from my point of view, is the best. So you work a year, you study a year, your year of being in academia will be much richer for your having worked a year. And the next time you go to work, it will be much richer for your having spent a year in academia. And I think in the long term, you will be a better design professional. And if you're lucky, the economic remuneration will eventually come. And if not, you'll just feel better, which I think is what we're saying here. But I really think that the balance between the two is crucial from my point of view.
You just have to adjust your expectations.
Yes.
But I have to second, I really agree with you. I have to say, just from my personal experience, I did my undergrad and I was convinced that at that point I should go and do a master's degree, and I was convinced I'm going to be a great designer. And then I got a job offer and decided, well, maybe I postponed it for a year. And in that year, I realized that A, I was probably not that good at a designer. 2, I get really bored if I do details for months at a time. And 3, I was really interested in the technical side and really good at that. And it totally changed where I then wanted to go for a graduate degree. It really focused what I wanted to get out of my graduate degree. And it really shaped what program. When I was looking at graduate degrees first, I had this total like shotgun approach to I'll just apply everywhere there's a good design school.
Whatever the name of the school.
Right. After that year of work, I literally just applied at 2 schools because I knew those were the 2 programs that would really get me what I wanted to get out of it. So I completely agree with that.
Does anybody have any questions out in the audience?
Okay. Thank you. I've done time in China, and I see that we have some Europeans here. So I was interested in, because climate change is a global issue, and I was interested in, do you see differences in standards or education? Of course, there's differences in the way people do things, but between countries, do you think it's so great, or do you think that whether you're in the United States, whether you're in Germany, it's the same principles that kind of apply everywhere? Because I'm someone who likes to travel. I want to know, do I have to get a certification in each country I stop in, or do you think get a good education and then no matter where you go, you can use it wherever you are?
The fundamentals are the same, right? If you're looking at the physics and the science behind it, that's very transferable. And I think as long as if you have a solid base in that, it's very easy then to adapt to your local context. Like, for example, if you understand how a lot of the building sustainability principles work, it doesn't really matter whether you look at a Estidama rating system or a Green Globes rating system or LEED or Green Sign Australia. You can very quickly get up to speed in the local regulations. I think it's more than a question of the barriers are there than more cultural language, things like that, and the science. You might still, from a professional accreditation standpoint, if you want to do certain things, need to get something local, need to think about those transfer things. But those are more bigger picture professional accreditation things than your sustainability skill set.
I think that's right. I think these days moving from place to place is not the issue, but the adaptation time. There's still adaptation time. I worked for a short time in Austria and trying to understand the difference in the use of materials, which materials made sense there as opposed to the way that we would typically use them here. It takes a while, so it's not, but I think Nico's right. It's just adapting and being prepared to devote the time that you need to adapt to those locations.
I just want to add a little shade to that. The 3 people sitting here, Argentina, Poland, Germany. We are in New York, and also the perspective from all over the world. I think the design and understanding of sustainability applies equally everywhere the same. The language, the metric system, and the permit to work. Unfortunately, in Europe, people have much more ability to hop between the countries. Here from US, it's not that easy.
Although I would caution that you will hardly find an English engineer working in France, for example. There's similar barriers there, even if it's nominally easier.
You've been talking mostly about the design and technological aspects of your practices, and I'm just curious as to where you see things like costing externalities, or where you see things like present value analysis and future value analysis and things like that fitting in your practices, because I'm really great at that stuff and I can't draw a straight line. But I'm just curious as to whether that's something that you internalize in your practices, or does your accountant tell you that stuff?
The long-term cost analysis is something that we push to have done, but it's not something that we do internally. So it typically happens in the modeling that either a firm like Atelier Ten or the engineers that we work with, they will model and then we'll analyze it with them, and obviously it becomes part of the decision-making process. But it's not something that we do internally. But it's very much a part of it. The buildings that we build, we like to think are 50 to 100 year buildings. Someone's not going to build another performing arts center, another library 5 years from now. So the life of the building, the operations of the building, the ability of the building to adapt over time is something that is really essential to what we do, and so we do pay a lot of attention to it.
It's a challenge because those are the things which are really affecting the people who own the buildings rather than the people who are designing the buildings. You may account or you can try to convince the client, but this is one of the reasons why I'm saying that for the designers, architects and interior designers to get involved in facility management and bring that kind of knowledge and bring that kind of thinking and analyzing is very important to really have an impact.
Yeah, just to second this, the financial economic analysis is typically a very collaborative effort, because a firm like ours would provide the operational cost variances between different design options. You then typically work with a contractor cost estimator to figure out what the first cost differences are for these options. We don't have the background and databases to generate first cost difference for different design options, especially if you work nationally or internationally. You need the local knowledge. And then, as you were saying, there's lots of client internal cost factors. What's their tax rates? What are their incentive structures they can implement? What is their overhead numbers and so on? So it typically becomes a collaborative effort. We often run the numbers in the spreadsheet, which is the easy bit. The hard one is to figure out all the inputs, and that's where it becomes a collaborative effort.
Hi. Sorry, I work with the Department of Education and with the Office of Career Technical Education, and we're expanding our course offerings to offer different types of training in the career technical fields. We have pre-engineering and then aeronautics and electrical, mechanical engineering, a lot of different trades, some of the more traditional construction trades as well as other non-traditional trades like advertising. So we developed a model, it's a 9 to 14 model, which includes an associate's degree while you're in high school as well as an apprenticeship. And I noticed that you guys are from different countries and Germany is represented, and you have the German model of apprenticeship is something that's been very much looked at and examined to see if it's integration. But in general, I mean, I was just in a school earlier today, and the level of, calculus and, computations and rigor that is in the high school curriculums now is really intense. But in the same way, it's still looking at the market, in the traditional sense, not in the way that it's all integrated and flat with the collaboration, with the economics and, the environment and materials and mechanical systems, and really looking at, design in that holistic way, which is actually a part of my job, is to help move through that. So thank you for your presentations. But what I want to know, as the system starts to change and evolve to meet more rigor and to prepare high school students, what do you see as essential skills that we can put even before they enter? We spoke about undergraduate programs, but while they're inside of the high schools, what combinations of skills or maybe even sectors or blocks do you see as absolutely, a foundational set to put together that really would prepare students to meet, this new evolving, design criteria that will be essentially the standard, and in your own education, were there elements of your education, perhaps in the countries that you came from, if you were educated there, that you found to be useful elements of that education system that help you prepare you as a professional, if you went through apprenticeship or a certain level of rigor and a certain study, that really prepared you well to do well, as you, grew as a professional?
Even though Grazyna said I was born in Argentina, which is true, I grew up in Texas, which is another country altogether, so it's doubly international. Again, from a sort of broad design perspective, which I have to keep repeating is what I'm bringing to this, seeing, analyzing, and sort of synthesizing information, I think, are the most important things. So you ask, in my training, probably the most effective 6 months that I spent were working construction between undergraduate and graduate school, and just understanding the three-dimensional aspects and what the people in the field are doing. And I think that's been invaluable. And I think that's often left aside in design is I'm always fascinated when I go to the construction site, because any person that I talk to has a universe of knowledge about a topic that I only have just the tiniest bit of knowledge, and all I can do is ask a question because they know so much more than I do about how to put those two pieces of something together or how to make a piece of machinery work. And I think that's the most important thing to learn as a designer, is that the implementation, the making something, how something becomes real, requires you to know the people that are physically making it. And I think we need to just keep repeating that to ourselves. That's where it really happens. And so that time spent understanding that, I think, is from an apprenticeship was probably the most useful.
I have to say, I mean, my experience going to school in Germany was very much about the fact that the school system there gave you some flexibility in how you selected classes based on kind of like general tracks of your orientation, but it still had a fundamentally comprehensive core that everybody had to run through. And I still think that the fundamentals, I'll come back to that, is I think really what we need to make sure we're not losing sight of in being fascinated with like the glitzy new stuff or the kind of like what the market currently wants. I think the things that we look for in professionals right now at work is certain technical knowledge and things like that. But that's all based on people who can write really well, who can understand numbers and can do math, who can read and understand the complex technical documents. Those are fundamental skills that if you don't have them, all of the other stuff doesn't really matter. So I think actually focusing on this kind of like comprehensive, well-balanced skill set that, again, in my schooling, you had to take art classes and you had to take your physics and chemistry and biology classes. I think having that full range is and being rigorous about it, I think, is what is core. I think there's a tendency now to appease people who are very worried about their first job afterward, to teach skills that are potentially very short-lived or very much take time away from doing other things. It's funny, I learned how to touch type when I got to graduate school, because it was never taught in my school. We never learned, I mean, we did computer classes, but nobody ever taught this kind of practical skill of how do you actually type fast on a computer to do anything. And my career hasn't suffered because I didn't know this until I was 27. But I learned it then really quick. So, so I think the fundamental, I think fundamental skill sets and the requirement to be able to have a solid base across a wide set of disciplines, I think is really critical in my mind.
I'm having a little, schizophrenia in that, because I was educated initially in my country, in Poland, and when I look at the education system or situation in this country, I get very upset very often. I consider education a basic right, and not, and I cannot understand why in this country it seems to be luxury. What you, Nico, describing, it's my experience, that you start with very strong, broad knowledge, and it is then much easier, as one of my colleagues, her last name is Martini, and she will call this Martini glass. You go from the broad to the narrow, and it's so much easier to learn skills or a particular thing which right now you may want to do if you have that kind of broad education which at least continued through the high school, which spans from the humanistics through science, through art, and allows you to choose and then be flexible. So I don't understand why this is considered luxury in the richest country in the world, you know.
Thanks. I had one more question, which was, how do you see this kind of design thinking, the holistic sustainability approach, transferring to other fields through maybe some of your interactions with clients or through your students?
It's like the $1 million question. I don't know. I think we are in a transitional point. I think fundamentally 10 years from now, every organization will deal with sustainability within their own rights. And that will, for some organizations, will really need to look at their products, how they look at their value chain. For some people, it will look differently. But I think sustainability is an amazing field right now because you kind of can find entry-level positions in this field in kind of like every industry. And in almost every industry, you can really create a position for you because it's still so undefined and it's still changing. I think there is, in my mind, there is in every industry right now what we're seeing is this push and pull where general regulation and requirements are increasing. So there's a compliance aspect that gets stronger and stronger, but there's also still a very strong desire to differentiate yourself and lead in your industry on sustainability. So I'm not sure how this maps out to every one of the different fields, but I think there's lots of opportunities to take it and make it your own.
The way we start the graduate program is by asking students to define sustainability. Because when you think about it, really, when you think about the definition of the world, it spans over everything. So the whole idea, people are bringing to my attention that our industry, the built environment industry, has a very strong impact on industry. That we can make a really market change. Infuse that. And I think I witnessed that, you know, through the last 20 years of involvement in sustainability in the built environment. So the only thing is now how we pull everybody else behind us. And I don't know, I'm looking inside of this school, every program devoted to advertising, illustration, packaging, fashion, marketing, all of that. So I think it will be spreading, and there is no other way. We cannot function in that way.
This is a tough topic. This is the one I lose the most sleep over. our profession tends to be very cyclical and very fashion-oriented. I probably shouldn't be saying that in the Fashion Institute of Technology, but trends. And I'm probably the oldest person. I'm sure I'm the oldest person up here, and I've seen more of these trends. And that's what really worries me, is that the interest and the desire for sustainable design will sort of wane and something else will come along. And I think that's why it's so important. I think what we've been discussing here about absorbing it, making it part of a basic approach to design, because when it isn't a basic approach to design, when it's how can I make this more green? How can I make it appear more green? What can I add to this that will make it green? I think it runs a real risk of not lasting over time. And so I think the most important thing is to be able to make it an intrinsic and inseparable part of the most basic design approach. And that's probably not exactly in response to your question, but I just felt like I had to get that out there.
Thank you. I'm very curious about the personal career story of each of you. So my question is, if you guys look back to the age when you just entered the working market, I assume which the situation of most of us are having now, is there anything you have done or decision you have made that is turned out to be very helpful to your future career? Or is there something you hope, you wish you should have done differently? Thank you.
Okay, put me on a spot. I graduated, I had my master's from Poland, but then I graduated from FIT as a second profession. And when I was graduating from FIT, one of the things which caught my attention is that interior design in this country was still, and it is still, defining itself. And I wanted to get involved in that dialogue about what interior design is. And one of the things which caught my attention was sustainability. So instead of doing senior design project, the typical, design project, I wrote about sustainability and interior design. And 2 years later, I published the very first book, which was devoted to eco-interiors. That was in 1995. And the only other books on sustainability in interior design, I'm not talking about architecture. There were like pretty books for the tables, but not textbook, not something what would. So that set me for life. But in a way, I think I was also looking at finding for myself that interior design is not about decorating, that interior design is about changing people's lives, impacting people's lives, impacting their health, impacting their way of thinking. And sustainability was a perfect tool to speak about that. I think that's my personal story.
I mean, I have to say, I look back and I was very lucky that some of the things really worked out, so I wouldn't change anything. But I think what worked well for me was that I didn't plan too far ahead. I tried to figure out what's the next step that goes into a direction that fundamentally the question I asked myself was, this is going to be fun. And this is going to go in a direction that I'm interested in and leaves me choices then where it goes. Because that leaves you flexibility in kind of like taking the opportunities that come up. When I originally came to the US, I wanted to do a 2-year master and then rejoin my girlfriend in London. The girlfriend was gone after a year and the plan was over. So then you reconsider and figure out what you do next. So you can't kid yourself thinking that you can plan too much ahead. And you need to figure out what is fun, what's exciting. And I like the word fun a lot better than passion. I've met a lot of people who are passionate about work, and they got a real tunnel vision about their passion. I think the fun part is a little bit more flexible, where you say, this could be fun and interesting, and this is where I want to go, and then allow yourself to be flexible and take a look at the opportunities that are out there. I still remember there's a great article that I once read about the difference between people who are considered lucky and people who are considered unlucky. And there was this test where you basically gave people a magazine and said, go through this magazine and count every time you see a certain image. And somewhere in that magazine was a full-page ad that says, if you get to this page doing this test, stop. And so the people that were considered unlucky were the ones who got all the pictures, but they were so focused on counting the pictures that they didn't see the page that said, you're done, stop now. While the people who kind of like had this peripheral vision and kept more flexible, a lot of those, the lucky ones, saw that page and stopped. So I think there's a lot of this to kind of like just be nimble and flexible. In particular, since I think that we are in a really screwed up professional world right now that fundamentally doesn't work, and particularly not for women. I think we're in a situation where this whole idea of like a career that you take and you work hard and then go forward doesn't work in our world, especially if you're living in New York and want to have a family very well. You will get to this point where you will need to make decisions where you go sideways and do something else and stay nimble. And I think we're far away from solving this problem. So the more you can prepare yourself to be flexible, the better you're off, I think.
I think flexibility is important. I think also not being discouraged. So two things. One, from my own experience, was, again, sort of jumping back and forth between different worlds. You know, hammering 2x4s for 6 months and then studying medieval philosophy for the next 6 months was, I think the best approach. But I think that the not discouraging is your first jobs are going to be all over the place. You know, you're not going to land in that great design job or that great sustainability job that you've wanted and you've dreamed about. You're going to go work, you know, for somebody that you think does reasonable work, but it's not exactly what you want, and then you're going to find something else, and eventually you'll find your path within that sort of slight oscillation between what's available, and before you know it, you'll be where you want to be. But if you keep too focused on only one path, it's just really hard to get there. And I think Nico's right, you know, because of maybe our profession is screwed up. Maybe that's just the way it's always been. I don't know. I don't have that broad a view on it, but just, you know, if you're doing something where you're learning and it's adding to what you're capable of, that's good. It doesn't have to be the perfect job. You don't have to be there right now. And I guess that's what we've been saying is, you know, sort of a long-term view also about graduate school. You don't go to graduate school because the day you get out of graduate school, you're going to land the perfect job that's going to pay you a ton of money. If you do, you're going to be disappointed, almost certainly. So, you know, you go to graduate school because you think that 10 years from now you want to be teaching. You think that 10 years from now you want to have a broader base to what you're doing. 10 years from now you want to be more specialized in something. I think you have to have that long vision, but be willing to, you know, get to it in a less than direct way.
All right, well, thank you, all of you, and thank you, everyone, for coming.